Welcome to NoFace TechTalk, the voice behind the code. Deliberately anonymous, focusing attention on the human or conceptual forces behind the tech, the voice behind the code. Okay, let's unpack this world-changing phenomenon, the AI revolution, the intense competition brewing between the US and China, and what it could fundamentally mean for all of us. We're going to start with a moment that felt almost like a turning point, captured vividly in the material we looked at. The Go match between the AlphaGo computer program and the human world champion, PG. Picture that intensity. PG, one of the greatest players ever, trying absolutely everything, conservative moves, aggressive attacks, defensive stands, unpredictable feints.
You know what's described as fascinating? Nothing worked. AlphaGo wasn't just winning, it was systematically shutting him down, giving him zero openings, just this relentless, slow pressure.
Yeah. What strikes me is how that single event was perceived so differently. From Silicon Valley, for some it felt like a simple continuation of Western tech dominance. U.S. companies for decades have rolled over local competition globally, becoming the dominant digital platforms.
Right. Google acquires DeepMind, DeepMind creates AlphaGo, Google wins. It looked like the next logical step in a long-held lead.
But in Beijing,
The perspective was completely different. That AlphaGo victory didn't signal U.S. dominance. It triggered what's described as a Chinese AI frenzy.
okay,
And that stark contrast, that intense reaction, is really the heart of our deep dive today. We're exploring the layers of this AI race between the U.S. and China, how different their approaches are, what's fueling each side, and the massive implications for economies, societies, and even our sense of being human.
our mission then is to pull out the most important threads from this exploration. We want to help you see the underlying forces driving this AI era, understand these two very distinct national paths, anticipate some of the big challenges ahead, and hopefully uncover some unexpected insights about what truly holds value as machines get smarter. So before we dive into the competition, let's set the stage for this moment in AI. It's mentioned that for decades, AI science felt stuck. There were academic breakthroughs, but they rarely made it into the real world in a significant way.
Right. It was a slow burn for a long time. But then came what's described as a breakthrough, deep learning. This wasn't entirely new technology, but this new approach, applied with sufficient computing power and data, truly turbocharged machines' ability to learn and perform cognitive tasks.
And suddenly, things that felt like science fiction were happening.
Exactly. Programs powered by deep learning could suddenly outperform humans at recognizing faces, understanding speech, or analyzing complex patterns to make decisions like issuing loans. The AI revolution that always felt 5 years away finally started arriving in the real world.
But you mentioned it wasn't new technology. Where did this come from?
Well, the foundational ideas, neural networks, they actually date back to the 50s and 60s. They generated a lot of excitement, but then the progress stalled.
Leading to those periods sometimes called AI winters.
Precisely. In the 70s, again in the 90s, the technology just wasn't robust enough. The data wasn't there. The computing power wasn't sufficient for real-world complexity. I remember working on things like the Sphinx speech recognition program back in the 80s. A big deal at the time, but still pretty limited. Neural networks just weren't cutting it back then for complex stuff.
So what changed? What brought neural networks back from the fringes?
The material points to 2012 as a key moment. A team led by Geoffrey Hinton entered a computer vision competition using one of these revamped neural networks, now called deep learning.
Okay.
They didn't just win, they absolutely blew away the competition.
Right. That sounds like the thaw.
It really was. That moment catapulted deep learning into the mainstream consciousness. Its potential became clear applying AI's power to things like deciphering speech, recognizing images, translating languages, predicting behavior, even helping robots navigate the physical world. The buzz became immense.
Now, a crucial clarification here. Is this the all-powerful AI we see in movies, the kind that takes over the world?
No, not at all. What we have now, deep learning, is what's called narrow AI. It's incredible at taking data from one specific domain and optimizing for one specific outcome.
Okay.
It's brilliant within its niche, but it's a long, long way from general AI, that hypothetical all-purpose intelligence that could do anything a human can. Getting to general AI, it suggested, would require entirely new scientific breakthroughs we don't currently foresee.
Got it. Narrow AI is powerful but limited in scope. And what ingredient makes this narrow deep learning so potent today?
Data. Lots and lots of data. The material puts it simply. There's no data like more data.
Oh.
While you need strong algorithms, a narrow domain, and a clear goal, the sheer volume of relevant data is often the dominant factor right now. It's pointed out that in this age of implementation, even an algorithm developed by mid-level engineers can outperform one by a world-class researcher if the first one has access to significantly more data.
Wow.
Data availability is driving so much of this.
Okay, let's circle back to the AI race itself. We mentioned the initial U.S. view, seeing AlphaGo as just another win.
And then came China's explosive rise. The material notes that China actually pulled ahead of the U.S. in global AI venture funding for the first time, capturing something like 48% of it.
48%? Wow.
Yeah. This wasn't accidental. It was fueled by intentional government support and what was termed that Chinese AI frenzy.
This seems deeply tied to incredibly different entrepreneurial cultures, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There's a fascinating contrast drawn. Silicon Valley, it suggests, emerged from an environment of plenty. The entrepreneurs often came from comfortable backgrounds, grew up hearing they could change the world, drove through quiet, tree-lined streets.
Right.
This fosters a culture of lofty ambitions, a focus on pure innovation, and a certain stigma around copying. The goal is to make a unique dent in the universe.
And China.
That's described as perhaps the most cutthroat competitive environment on the planet.
Wow.
Speed is king, copying is simply accepted, and competitors, it's said, will stop at nothing.
Yeah.
It's a relentless trial-by-fire atmosphere, like being a gladiator in the Colosseum. Yeah. This intense pressure means you have to constantly improve, constantly innovate business models, and constantly build defenses or moats around your company because any successful idea or even key employees will be instantly copied or poached.
This brings up the historical perception of Chinese tech companies as just copycats. The example of Wang Xing is used making pixel-for-pixel clones early on.
Right. And Silicon Valley elites often looked at that and thought it would prevent China from truly innovating. But the argument presented is that Wang Xing didn't win because he copied. He won because that brutal environment forced him to become a gladiator. He honed his skills in battles like the War of a Thousand Groupons, where simply copying the U.S. deal of the day model wasn't enough. He had to adapt it for Chinese users, build a more complex interface, manage offline sales teams, and simply out-execute everyone through sheer grit and speed.
And speaking of U.S. companies, there's a surprising take offered on why so many failed to gain traction in China beyond just government protectionism.
Yeah, based on extensive experience on the ground, the argument presented is that the primary reason was often their own approach. U.S. companies tended to treat China as just another international market.
Like an afterthought, almost.
Kinda. They often didn't commit sufficient resources or patience. They failed to truly tailor their products for unique Chinese preferences and habits, or, crucially, build them from the ground up in China, for China.
And this affected talent retention.
Yes. It suggested that top Chinese talent often left U.S. companies because they felt like local hires, hitting a career ceiling. They'd watch local startups led by these gladiatorial entrepreneurs surge ahead while they were stuck reporting to cautious American managers who maybe didn't grasp the pace or intensity.
You have cautious managers up against people who see competition as war.
Exactly. There's that anecdote about Zhu Hongyi of Qihoo 360 apparently clashing with Silicon Valley leadership, reportedly being incredibly confrontational, telling them they were naive about the competitive landscape in China. You know, maybe saying things like, "You guys don't get it." That's the gladiatorial mindset in action. In that ecosystem, those kinds of tactics are common. If you launch a successful product, competitors might copy it instantly, try to discredit you publicly, or even launch cyber attacks as described. Your only real defense is often to escalate or outmaneuver them just as aggressively.
And the U.S. government has a largely hands-off approach compared to China's proactive stance.
A stark difference, yeah. The text highlights how local government leaders in China actively competed to attract AI companies, offering significant subsidies and preferential treatment. Campaigns like mass entrepreneurship and mass innovation became national directives, driving a level of government support that's fundamentally different from the U.S. model.
Okay, let's explore China's digital world a bit more. It's called an alternate internet universe in the material. What makes it so distinct?
It really evolved on its own path, especially after 2012. It's fundamentally built on mobile-first users, centered around the WeChat super app, and relies heavily on mobile payments being absolutely everywhere.
WeChat sounds like it's in a category all its own, more than just messaging.
Oh, absolutely. It truly is. It's not just a messaging app. It's like a digital Swiss Army knife. Users live inside it, messaging friends, yes, but also paying bills, buying groceries, booking doctor's appointments, filing taxes, unlocking shared bikes, ordering food delivery, buying movie tickets.
Ah.
All seamlessly integrated into one platform. It consolidates functions that would be spread across a dozen different apps elsewhere.
And the mobile payment numbers are just staggering.
Unbelievable. Tencent cleverly leveraged red envelopes, essentially digital cash gifts for holidays, to get millions to link their bank accounts.
That clever.
Yeah. From there, mobile payments exploded. By 2017, Chinese mobile payment transactions reportedly outnumbered those in the U.S. 50-1, totaling over $17 trillion.
$17 trillion, compared to 50 times less in the U.S.
50-1. It's a different world.
And that creates something incredibly valuable for AI, right?
Yeah.
All that data.
Absolutely. It generates what's called the richest maps of consumer activity anywhere on the planet. That level of granular real-world transaction data tied directly to individuals through WeChat is gold for training AI models. It goes far beyond what platforms like Google Search or credit card data can capture.
Another key piece of this unique landscape is the explosion of online to offline, or O2O. What's that about?
This is where the digital world is stitched directly into the physical economy. Think food delivery services, bike sharing, managing rentals, ride-hailing.
Okay.
Even Didi, the ride-hailing giant, apparently buying gas stations. It's a going-heavy approach where companies use scale, efficiency, and sometimes lower labor costs to manage complex logistical details directly.
Which contrasts with Silicon Valley's tendency to go light.
Yeah.
Right, like Airbnb not owning the properties.
Exactly. Silicon Valley tends to build platforms and avoid the physical grunt work.
And that difference has consequences for AI development.
The argument made is that Silicon Valley's go light approach has maybe hindered things like widespread mobile payment adoption and collecting that crucial real-world activity data in the U.S. China is going heavy in O2O, combined with its dense cities and large mobile-first user base, creates this unprecedented stream of real-world data.
Right.
That oil that powers the generators of AI, as it's put. This unique universe gives China a significant data advantage, especially for certain types of AI.
So how is AI actually rolling out across the economy? The material describes it happening in 4 distinct ways.
Right. It's not a single event, but more like a phased transformation affecting different sectors at different times.
The first wave is Internet AI. This one feels familiar.
Yeah, this is the one we're most familiar with, probably. AI optimizing online services by learning from our digital behavior, what we click, watch, search for, buy. It powers recommendation engines like Alibaba's, targeted advertising on Google, personalized suggestions on YouTube.
Makes the internet sticky.
Incredibly effective at giving us what we want, sometimes too effective, making it addictive. The text points to Jinri Tushio, ByteDance's news aggregator, as a prime example of a company built entirely on AI as its core editor. The algorithm decides what news you see.
Okay, the second wave is business AI. How's that different?
This moves beyond just the internet to mine the vast databases held by traditional industries. Think insurance companies, banks, hospitals, factories. AI can find hidden correlations and patterns in that data that humans simply can't see.
Hidden patterns.
Yeah. The text notes how algorithms can analyze thousands of seemingly insignificant weak features alongside the obvious strong features to make far better predictions, whether assessing loan risk or diagnosing diseases.
That medical diagnosis example is really powerful. Tell me more about that.
It is. Imagine an AI system trained on millions, literally millions of patient cases, constantly scanning the latest medical research from around the world. It doesn't replace the doctor, not at all. But it can provide a diagnosis accuracy booster, turning potentially any medical professional into a kind of super diagnostician with access to vast experience.
So it frees the doctor up.
Exactly. Frees the doctor to focus on the human aspects. Caring for the patient, communicating complex information, providing comfort. And crucially, it can help disseminate that expert-level diagnostic knowledge in places where access to top specialists is limited.
Okay, that makes sense. Then wave 3 is perception AI.
This is where AI starts digitizing the physical world around us. Think smart devices equipped with sensors and cameras that can see and hear.
Like Alexa or Google Home.
Yeah, Amazon Echo hears us. Alibaba's City Brain uses cameras and object recognition to manage urban traffic flows. Your iPhone X using facial recognition to unlock. That's perception AI.
And we're seeing real-world applications popping up, like paying with your face.
Yes, the example of using facial recognition to pay at a KFC in China with Alipay is a classic one. Just look at the camera, link to your account, and you're done. No fumbling for cash or cards.
Very convenient.
Yeah, and there's this detailed simulation provided of a shopping trip at a place called Yonghui Superstore to really illustrate the potential of this wave.
Okay, walk me through that shopping trip.
Okay, picture this. You grab a shopping cart, and it greets you by name. It scanned your face as you entered.
Whoa.
It's connected to an AI profile that knows your shopping habits, maybe even what's in your smart fridge at home. You can talk to it, ask it to adjust your grocery list. The cart then guides you autonomously through the store layout, optimized for your list.
It drives itself.
Yeah. As you put items in, built-in depth-sensing cameras and sensors identify and weigh them automatically. You want fresh noodles? A robot makes them for you on the spot. Need wine? A human concierge, aided by an AI drawing on massive consumer data, recommends the perfect bottle based on your past purchases or maybe what you're having for dinner.
And paying, how does that work?
Happens automatically via WeChat wallet as the concierge bags your groceries. You just walk out the cart. It returns itself to the docking station.
That does sound ordinary in a way, yet utterly revolutionary. It's frictionless.
Right. It feels simple for the shopper, but underneath, it's collecting massive amounts of data, optimizing the supply chain, personalizing everything, and boosting the store's profitability. It connects the physical and digital seamlessly.
How does this perception AI wave impact education?
Perception AI, combined with data, allows for incredibly tailored learning experiences. AI systems can build detailed profiles of students, tracking their understanding, their reactions, maybe even their attention levels through facial expressions, their learning speed, what motivates them. It can generate customized homework and drills precisely targeted to where a student is struggling or excelling. Speech recognition is already being used for language learning, like helping Chinese students perfect their English pronunciation.
Okay.
The systems can even alert parents if a child is falling behind, or help remote tutoring platforms connect students with the best teachers by analyzing engagement data from recorded sessions.
And China's hardware ecosystem seems to give them an edge in rolling out these smart devices for perception AI.
Absolutely. The text highlights Shenzhen as a critical hub. The sheer density of thousands of factories, suppliers, and prototyping facilities means startups there can design, build, and iterate on new smart devices incredibly quickly and cheaply compared to the US. A week in Shenzhen prototyping can apparently be like a month in Silicon Valley. Much faster iteration.
There's also a point made about cultural attitudes towards data privacy.
Yes, it's observed that Chinese users, perhaps culturally or due to different norms, have been more nonchalant about data privacy compared to the West. This has made the widespread implementation of things like facial recognition and ubiquitous sensing for perception AI much smoother and faster, arguably giving China another potential advantage in deploying this wave.
Okay, that brings us to the final wave, autonomous AI.
Right. This is where AI physically interacts with and manipulates the world, transforming industries with self-driving cars, autonomous drones, and advanced robotics. Think of robots picking strawberries with delicate precision, or those shelves that move themselves to the human workers in an Amazon warehouse.
And the material draws a fascinating contrast in how the US and China approach autonomous vehicles and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. In the US, the focus has largely been on building incredibly smart autonomous cars that can navigate our existing, often messy roads.
Right, adapting the tech to the world.
Exactly. In China, the scale of potential change is different. Local officials aren't just adapting existing roads, they're building entirely new cities, like Xiong'an, specifically designed for driverless cars from the ground up.
Building the world for the tech.
Kind of. It's described as promoting coevolution rather than just conquest. The car and the infrastructure evolve together.
This wave clearly brings up some complex ethical questions, too.
It certainly does. The material touches on the significant social challenge of potentially displacing millions of professional drivers, truckers, taxi drivers, delivery people. And then there are the thorny ethical dilemmas, like the classic trolley problem scenarios where an autonomous vehicle might have to make an unavoidable choice involving harm.
Right.
These aren't just philosophical thought experiments anymore. They become real engineering and policy questions that need answers.
Okay, moving beyond the technology itself, the material presents a significant argument about the societal impact. The real threat isn't some far-off superintelligence taking over.
Exactly. The core concern raised isn't about general AI becoming sentient and deciding humans are obsolete, which isn't seen as being on the horizon. The real, immediate threat comes from the capabilities of narrow AI right now, the potential for tremendous social disorder and political collapse stemming from widespread unemployment and gaping inequality.
So massive productivity gains are possible, but potentially at the cost of widespread job disruption and deep psychological effects from the loss of work and purpose.
Precisely. The loss of purpose many people derive from their jobs is a huge potential issue.
Now, there's the long-held argument, the techno-optimist view, that technology always creates more jobs than it destroys in the long run, the Luddite fallacy.
Right, and the text addresses this directly. It looks at general purpose technologies, or GPTs, throughout history, things like the steam engine, electrification. Those technologies generally did boost both productivity and employment eventually.
But then there was the most recent GPT, information and communication technologies, ICT, the internet, computers.
And that's where something different started happening, what's sometimes called the Great Decoupling.
The great decoupling.
Yeah. Over the last few decades, particularly in the US, productivity has continued to rise steadily, driven by ICT, but median income and employment have largely flatlined or even declined for some groups.
Why?
ICT had a significant skill bias. It tended to complement high-skilled workers, making them more productive, while automating away routine tasks done by mid-skill workers, concentrating value and wealth at the top. That led to the decoupling.
And the argument presented is that AI will be a GP key that exacerbates this decoupling, with potentially even more negative impacts on both employment and income distribution.
Precisely. The material suggests AI has distinct skill biases. Unlike previous technologies that primarily replaced routine manual labor, AI's algorithms are easier and cheaper to build and distribute globally than complex, dexterous robots.
Okay.
This means AI is poised to automate routine cognitive tasks impacting white-collar information processing jobs potentially sooner and more broadly than many anticipate. Think analysts, paralegals, maybe even some radiologists or financial advisors performing routine analysis.
And the speed of adoption is a factor, too.
A huge factor. Digital dissemination is almost instantaneous. Venture capital funding pours rocket fuel on it. And you have China's hyper-competitive environment pushing adoption incredibly fast. It's not like the decades it took the steam engine to spread.
So the conventional wisdom that places like China, with lots of manual factory labor, are ground zero for job loss might be wrong, at least initially.
The argument made is that algorithms automating cognitive tasks are easier to scale globally than intelligent robots replacing manual tasks. Therefore, white-collar workers involved in information processing and decision-making could be initially more vulnerable in many countries than some routine manual labor roles.
And this power, this AI capability, seems to consolidate naturally.
Yeah, AI has a natural gravitational pull towards monopolies, the text argues. The core reason is the data feedback loop. Better AI products attract more users.
More users generate more data.
More data allows for even better AI products. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle.
A virtuous cycle for the winner, a vicious one for everyone else.
Exactly. It creates a powerful barrier to entry once a company or potentially a country establishes a significant lead in a particular domain.
And this paints a potentially stark picture for the future globally.
It does. It suggests a future where countries without the necessary ingredients, massive data, a large user base, the right tech ecosystem, supportive government, might be left behind, sort of stuck without a clear rung on the development ladder.
And within the leading AI countries, like the US and China.
The concern is that monopolies could consolidate immense wealth and power, potentially leading to a labor market starkly divided into new economic castes. Maybe a small group of high-paid AI creators and owners, and a much larger group whose labor is devalued, or even a significant useless class, economically speaking.
That's grim.
The material doesn't shy away from the potential psychological impacts either. A profound societal loss of sense of worth, rising depression, maybe even contributing to trends like deaths of despair.
Given this potential crisis, how do we navigate forward? The material takes a significant turn here, bringing in a deeply personal perspective, which is quite powerful.
It does. A cancer diagnosis is described as a powerful, life-altering epiphany. It forced a reevaluation of a life that had become almost algorithmically optimized for maximizing influence and achievement, constantly working, traveling, maybe neglecting family and personal connections.
Like becoming a machine.
Yeah, a sense of having turned into a person that thought like a machine. That intense focus on optimization and human impact.
That confrontation with mortality led to a complete reordering of priorities, didn't it?
Absolutely. The profound realization, maybe for the first time, of the unquantifiable value of love and human connection, the care received from family during illness, the wisdom gained from others facing similar struggles, these experiences brought a depth of meaning that career accomplishments alone never could.
Hmm.
It highlighted the fundamental difference between AI's capability, brilliant correlation detection, pattern recognition, optimization, and the uniquely human capacity for sharing love, empathy, compassion.
And this personal realization informs a potential path forward, a kind of blueprint for coexistence with AI.
Exactly. The idea that emerges is to use the immense economic bounty that AI could generate, not just to fund a safety net for the displaced, but to fundamentally double down on what makes us human.
Down on being human.
Yeah, it's a call to reconstruct societies, rewrite social contracts, and rethink economic incentives to truly value the things that AI cannot do: caring, creating community, human connection.
What specific solutions are discussed? Job retraining is one.
It's acknowledged as necessary, of course, especially with online platforms making it more accessible, but it's also viewed potentially as a haphazard approach. Maybe not sufficient on its own for the sheer scale and speed of the disruption AI might cause. Like animals fleeing rising floodwaters, some make it, many don't.
Work sharing is another idea brought up. Spreading the available work around.
Right. Mentioning the example from the 2008 financial crisis where some companies reduced hours across the board and governments helped compensate lost wages to avoid mass layoffs, it's a potential tool.
Universal basic income, UBI, also gets a mention. That's a hot topic.
It is. The concept of providing a regular government stipend to everyone, perhaps funded by taxing the immense profits of AI-driven companies. The text notes its popularity in some Silicon Valley circles as a potential solution for mass unemployment.
But urges caution.
Urges critical thinking, yeah. Is the motivation purely about solving societal problems, or is it also partly about averting social unrest and perhaps assuaging a certain tech sector guilt about the disruption they're creating? It's a complex question.
One idea that stands out as uniquely human-focused is the emphasis on compassionate caregivers.
This is proposed as a really crucial sector for future human work that AI simply cannot replace, or at least not the core human element. Roles in medical care, elder care, early childhood education, they require deep emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, the irreplaceable human touch.
So, partnership.
Exactly. The vision is a kind of market symbiosis where AI provides powerful diagnostic or efficiency tools, maybe handling scheduling or record keeping, but humans provide the essential high-touch caregiving. This could potentially create millions of new, meaningful jobs and significantly improve the quality of care, especially in aging societies.
And building on that, the idea of a social investment stipend. What's that?
It's suggesting government support or subsidies not just for traditional jobs, but for other socially productive activities. Things like care work, maybe for family members, community volunteerism, continuing education, artistic creation, linking value to contribution beyond the formal market. The example of the large number of active community volunteers found in Taiwan is mentioned as a possible model for this kind of social contribution.
The material also encourages looking at different cultures for how societies might adapt, finding wisdom elsewhere.
Yes, drawing lessons from areas where different cultures seem to excel. South Korea's intense focus on gifted education, the U.S.'s developing strength in social and emotional learning curricula, Switzerland and Japan's deep cultural valuing of craftsmanship, Canada, and the Netherlands' strong volunteerism culture.
Right.
China's tradition of elder care and multi-generational households, Bhutan's unique focus on gross national happiness as a policy goal. These offer diverse perspectives on societal values that go beyond just pure economic output or GDP. Ultimately, though, the message circles back powerfully to choice, to human agency.
Despite the power of the technology and the scale of the changes, the future isn't predetermined by the algorithms. The text strongly emphasizes that the path forward depends on the actions of human beings. We must maintain our agency and actively decide how we want to shape this future.
The potential, as synthesized from this deep dive, is truly profound. To combine AI's immense ability to think, to process information, to optimize, with human beings' essential capacity to love, to connect, to care, to create meaning. That synergy is where the opportunity lies, leveraging AI for prosperity while fiercely valuing and nurturing our shared humanity.
So it really leaves us with a fundamental choice. Risk widespread crisis fueled by displacement, inequality, and maybe a loss of purpose. Or seize this as a pivotal moment to reinvent and rebuild societies, leveraging AI's capabilities while prioritizing human connection, compassion, and meaning.
And that really is the core question to ponder, isn't it, for all of us? In a world where machines can optimize, process, and perform so many tasks faster and better than we can, what are the human activities, the connections, the relationships that you believe we need to double down on? What does a truly well-lived life look like for your community, in an age increasingly transformed by algorithms? If you enjoyed this episode, like, share, and drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe for more faceless tech deep dives. Until next time, stay curious.